Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 1 to 21. We were able to look at that, hearing God's voice. And this is the issue of relationship with God. This goes down to the foundation of the question that many people ask: does God exist? And of course, if God exists, He should be recognizable or observable in everyday life and experiences of human beings. And Jeremiah chapter 15 is one peculiar chapter of the book of Jeremiah itself and the Bible that describes the relationship between God and Jeremiah and God and the people of Israel. A lot of the chapters in the book of Jeremiah only concentrate on Jeremiah speaking to the people of Israel. But in this very chapter, he is able to go down into quenching our curiosity of how does he even know this God that he is even claiming to communicate to translate his messages to others. So this chapter really goes down to bring out the unique relationship that the God of Jeremiah has with him, and that is what makes him to tell other people, my God has said, and in effect for the Israelites, our God. Okay? And that is why Jeremiah has the right to be a prophet. So Jeremiah, according to this chapter, is not just prophesying, he is communing with God. Okay? He is not just prophesying like in other chapters of the book of Jeremiah. He moves from just being a conduit of God's message to becoming the very subject of God's message. Okay? Through and through. And Jeremiah is terrified of the things he hears are going to happen to his nation Israel. Now that started from chapter 14, where God said, even if the people were to cry out to him, he would not answer. Okay? He would not answer because their crying out would be out of hypocrisy. They did not mean it. And if he did not punish them, they would not learn. So the challenge of faith for all of us in our generation, if we say we are faithful people, people who believe in God, is to build a relationship with him. We also discovered from the previous video that we are not required by his own standard to prove his existence to anybody. Okay? We are not required to prove that God exists to anybody. And that is one thing that conventional Christianity seems to sometimes forget. Okay? It seems to forget that we are not. And that is why the emphasis on miracles. But one thing, consistent thing you continuously discover in the Bible is that miracles actually are just supposed to convince you yourself. You want to be convinced, you want to know that God exists. That's why you're searching for miracles, rather than convincing the other person. Okay? Mainly. So what we are challenged to do is to build a relationship with God. And that is enough. After we have observed the wonderful things that he has created, we then build a relationship with him, and that is our assurance of what? Salvation. We do not have to prove he exists to anyone but ourselves. Next slide. Hearing God's voice and speaking to him, that is what entails a relationship. Okay? Whether we are vocalizing it or we are thinking it, doesn't matter. Hearing his voice and speaking back to him. Next slide. So you discover that a lot of people are excited about the audible voice, okay? But we also discover that sometimes the audible voice may be deceptive, okay? Maybe deceptive. Maybe voices from our subconscious, okay? Things we have heard before, things we have dreamt about. We are spirit beings, okay? So we can hear many things, even though we're not close to that thing, okay? But God's voice is rather a deeper, is from a deeper source, okay? And it's distinct, and it is from His own providence, okay, that He decides to speak to us. We cannot force Him to speak to us. But by prayer and meditation, we discipline ourselves over time to hear Him, okay? And the Bible tells us that only by prayer and meditation can we get to the level where we can hear Him so thoroughly. Because we are separated from Him by sin. And one of the most important ways that we can start that process is by knowing what He has said about Himself. Okay? That is why we need the Bible. He has chosen that method. There is nothing we can do. There are some people who base their faith on that it must be based on what they are hearing here and now. Okay? And so they tend to look down on the Bible. But they forget that without the Bible, some of them kind of diminish or de-emphasize most of the background relationship they must have had with other people that led them to Christ. Okay? So you find that what He has said about Himself is very important. That is what we see in the Bible. Okay? So now, in listening to His voice, one thing that I find very, very important is your own thoughts and your own reactions to Him. Okay? Getting familiar with what your own spirit is saying. Now, this is very tricky because sometimes if your parents are careless or careful to initiate you into occult at a young age, you might think that certain thoughts are your own, but they are not your own. Okay? So initiation into occult affects this, because a demon might be talking and you think it is you. Okay? It's not always so. Some of you have to read books. So next slide. An experience also teaches, because sometimes we attribute to ourselves things that is not ours. And that is why people have been lured into worshipping human beings. You see a small child, they block him in a temple. Okay? And that is their God. Because maybe the child was born with extra intelligence. Or with channeling spirits. So this is the problem with hearing God's voice. Okay? God's voice. You have to be disciplined in it. Some people here, of course, we have talked about the audible voice, and we've already talked about that. Don't compare yourself with such people, okay? Don't insist that because that person is hearing, has this spiritual experience, I must have it too. It may not work for you, okay? It may not work for you. That is the problem with the diversity of human beings. We are different. We are totally different. When you look at the different races, you find that there are peculiarities. Although we are the same, it's not like an animal where you have a tiger and a lion, okay? And they are two different species. But human beings are all the same, okay? We are all the same. We are better than that. But we have some differences. And with those differences come temperamental differences, okay? And all the many the other differences that you cannot compare yourself with others all the time. So let us continue. God's voice is in the deeper recesses of your mind. And only when he decides to speak, you hear him. It is a very peaceful, very loving experience, okay? And when you hear it, you normally know. Because his mercy ensures that you do. His mercy ensures that you do. But some, when you look at the testimonies of some people, they have to grow up before they hear, because they have been deprived from childhood by initiation into their call. Okay? That is the problem with human beings, because of those differences. So they have to grow up before experiences now will hit those things out. And now they begin to interact with the world at a different level. So this is a very, very technical topic. And those of us who claim to be Christians should be conversant with it, okay? If you are a Christian. In times of deep need, sometimes that is the best time to hear God, okay? That's the best time to hear God, to differentiate the voice of God from demons. You will know very clearly who is who, because the character will show, okay? God is our Father, and He will react to us in love, okay? But the demons will only want to push us deeper into trouble. So this is the thing. Next slide. So we see in Jeremiah 15 verse 16 and Jeremiah 15 verse 18 how the relationship between God and Isaiah, becomes the issue now, becomes Isaiah's personal life is at stake. How Isaiah chose to begin to worship God is very, very clear, as different from others, okay? He chose God from childhood by being independent from what every other person is doing, by concentrating on the word of God, okay? So this is peculiar, and it is God's providence and God's mercy. So this is just the thing, and he asks, and you see how he questions how sometimes the voice of God may be deceiving. Okay? He as a human being experiences that uncertainty that every other person experiences. In verse 18 of Jeremiah. Very important. Okay? The prophet of God is not insulated from the uncertainties that all of us experience. Like we see there. Next slide. And the secret to building a good relationship with God is to stop seeing God as a mere tool. Okay? Most of us, in my 15 or more, 20 years, okay, of ministry, I have discovered this. Most human beings only want food. Only food to make money. And whatever human being or God, they want to use God and human beings just as a tool to that. So most of them see God as only a tool. How can this person give me more food, more money, so that I can survive? And if you think that, if you are sincere in following God and you think that other people are like that, you might be wrong. Okay? You might be wrong. So don't see him as a tool. And when you stop seeing him as just a tool, a means to an end, you will hear his voice. Okay? No, you are talking to a person, not a thing. And when you know that, you will hear him better. And don't try to hide your insight from him. It is worthless. It is useless. To say you want to hide what you're feeling or what you're thinking, or any sin from him, it is worthless, because he is not a human being. Okay? It's not a human being. Next slide. Do not be quickly enticed This is the thing that is very important. We see it in 1 Kings chapter 20, verse 9 to 13. Elijah heard the strong wind. He knew God was not in it because of his experience. Okay? Even if God causes a strong wind, it may not mean, or just because he is coming, the demons are running, there will be a strong wind. Even the world will begin to shake. Okay? The Bible tells us that demons tremble at his name. Okay? At the end that he's coming, the elements will shake, they will move. Okay? They will not be able to stand his presence because he is the creator. So, what he causes doesn't mean that is him. Okay? That is the problem. Most people relate what he causes to himself. And it becomes a problem. Strong wind, earthquake, okay, with fire, and all those things. Almost. We're almost coming to the end of the video. So, and he was not in it. But when Elijah heard the still small voice, he knew this is God. And mostly God's voice is that still what? Small voice. Finally, obey him. When you establish the communication with him, obey. Next slide. Obey, okay? Obey him. This is the end of the video.